Okay, so I am here to read some of this article from the Examining the World Mission Society Church of God website, and I'm going to read some of the book in the PDF form or format that shows the 3 chapters that they removed from Unsung Hong's book. So the book they're talking about is The Mystery of God and the Spring of the Water of Life. They call that the Truth Book, a book written by Unsung Hong himself. So my question for them would be, since that is a truth book written by Unsung Hong, who you told me and all the other members of World Mission Society Church of God, you told me Unsung Hong was second coming Christ and he was Elijah. So why did you erase or remove 3 chapters of his book? You should have left it in there so that we could read it and have informed consent. It says here, the World Mission Society Church of God believes that Unsung Hong was the second coming of Jesus. The Bible clearly says, so does the World Mission Society Church of God, for that matter, do not add or take away from the Bible. That's Revelation chapter 22, verse 19. Yet, the WMSCOG deleted 3 chapters from the Mystery of God and the Spring of Water of Life in the 1980 edition. You understand? That's when nobody was in this church from the United States. So how can you know about it? By Unsung Hong, a man the WMSCOG claims was God. The 1980 version has 38 chapters, while the 2007 Korean English version of the book has 35 chapters. And I have this physical version right here, 2007 Korean English, and it does have 35 chapters. So that is a fact. As you can see in one of my other videos where I showed his book, where it shows that he says that Jesus is the only name by which you can receive salvation, not only at his first coming, but also at his second coming. So let's continue. This is not the first time we see the WMSCOG making critical edits to Unsung Hong's writings. Why would the WMSCOG delete entire chapters from a book written by someone they believe was God? The names of the missing chapters are Chapter 1, Restoration of Jerusalem and the Prophecy of 40 Years. Chapter 11, Let Us Reveal the Truth from the History Books about the Church. And Chapter 36, Elijah Will Be Sent. So what I'm about to do right now is read some of the PDF that has these 3 chapters in it. So although I don't have the physical green book with these 3 chapters that would make it 38 chapters, I do have the 2007 book with the 35, so I'm going to read the other 3 from this PDF, which I downloaded from this article. So give me one moment. Okay, so we are now inside this PDF. It's 22 pages, and as you can see here is Chapter 1, Restoration of Jerusalem and the Prophecy of 40 Years. And so I believe they got this book from the NCP-COG, where Unsung Hong's literal son is a member, right? Because he did have a physical family. He had 3 children. So they would know what their father wrote while he was on the earth, right? So I'm not going to read all 22 pages. So you can come to that article I just showed you and download it yourself. But I'm just going to read some of the main points in here, which may explain why they removed these chapters from the book. Okay, so he's quoting 2 Samuel 5 and 4 through 5. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. And so it also showing that Solomon reigned 40 years. So, they teach about the 40-year David's throne. So this is consistent with the other doctrine which they taught me and which they taught everybody else. Let's see. We'll read a little bit about Jonah here. At the time of Jonah, God told Jonah to enter the city of Nineveh to warn the city that it would be overthrown in 40 days. So there's that number 40 again. All right. Let's keep going. I think I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. Let's read here. Yeah, I need to read from. So I'm still in chapter 1 that was taken out of the Green Book. Let's start here. While it is true, well, I highlighted. While it is true that John the Baptist was sent to prepare the way for the first coming of Jesus as per Elijah's mission, before the final Lord's great and dreadful days strike, Elijah will come and restore all the truth. So that's what they say he did, restoring the feasts and all of that. Although there were other churches that were already keeping the feast, but this is what they teach. And declare the final judgment, and the world will come to an end thereafter. All right? So let me read this again. While it is true, this is one of the chapters they took out of the 2007 Green Book version and all the years after that, so that you who speak English, you in the United States who join this church, will not have access to this information. While it is true that John the Baptist was sent to prepare the way for the first coming of Jesus, as per Elijah's mission, before the final Lord's great and dreadful day strike, right? Days strike, Elijah will come and restore all the truth and declare the final judgment, and the world will come to an end thereafter. Do you see that? So that is what Unsung Hong prophesied in this book, in the Green Book, which they didn't want you to read this chapter. Now, if they believe this is truth, why didn't they leave it in there? That's called information control, right? That's how you create a mind-controlled zombie. You tell them only what you want them to hear, and anything that's inconsistent that can be viewed as a lie or false, you hide that from them. And then you demonize and criticize and insult people like me and everybody else who catches your lies and pretend you never said it. All of this prophecy will be fulfilled and brought to an end with 40 years of Israel and 40 years of spiritual Israel. Now, this is key. This is key. I'm going to read that again. All of this prophecy will be fulfilled and brought to an end with 40 years of Israel and 40 years of spiritual Israel. So what does it mean, Israel and spiritual Israel? Well, when Jesus died on the cross, it was about the year AD 30. And Jerusalem was overthrown in the history in AD 70 by the Roman army. So from AD 30 to AD 70, that's 40 years. That's the actual Israel. He said it's going to be the same thing with spiritual Israel. 40 years of spiritual Israel. That means you spiritual Israelites, which the phrase spiritual Israel is nowhere in the Bible. But anyway, he said you spiritual Israelites are going to last 40 years. Let's see 40 years from when. While concluding the mystery of the 40-day and 40-year history recorded above, Jesus said in Luke chapter 21, verse 24, they will fall by the sword. That's talking about AD 70, when the Roman general Vespasian and his son Titus started to come, and they eventually destroyed Jerusalem. They will fall by the sword and will be taken as prisoners to all the nations. Jerusalem will be trampled on by the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles are fulfilled, right? The above prophecy predicted that Jerusalem would come to collapse in 70 AD. And you can confirm this in a book called The Writings of Josephus. Some people pronounce it Josephus, Josephus. So that's Josephus. And it's actual history recording this event. And the nation of Israel came to independence on the 14th of May, 1948, when the Jewish state was established. So I'm going to read this again. The above prophecy predicted that Jerusalem would come to collapse in 70 AD. That's 40 years after Jesus' death. And the nation of Israel came to independence on May 14th, 1948, when the Jewish state was established. So that's when they say Unsung Hans got baptized or started preaching. Okay, fine. Let's assume he did get baptized in 1948 and not 1954, like the Seventh-day Adventist Church recorded. What does that mean? Jesus made a prophecy about this Jerusalem. Matthew 24, verse 32 through 34. Now learn this lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. Why did he use a metaphor of the fig tree, and what does this fig tree infer? And so, all of you know that you learned this fig tree prophecy if you were at the World Mission Society Church of God for any length of time. You know that they still teach this because they taught it to me and they teach it to you if you're still there. And if you used to be a member, you know they taught it. All right? I'm going to read right here. Furthermore, the Israeli nation itself descended from Adam all the way from the Garden of Eden. So the fig tree and the Israeli nation cannot be separated. However, this nation came to independence in 1948, and the branches have become tender and the leaves lush. You know what? I'll read the first part too. I'm sorry. I'll just read that too. Depending on the country, this part is symbolized by an animal or a tree. In Japan, this part is symbolized by the cherry blossom tree. In Korea, the rose of Sharon. And in Israel, the fig tree. This is because the fig tree is the oldest surviving tree from the old Garden of Eden, Genesis 3 and 7. So that's what he was saying there. The fig tree is related directly to the nation of Israel. Whereas he put it here, the Israeli nation. Because those people in 1948 are Israelis. No one has proven that they are genetically tied to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. All right. Let's keep going. Yeah, let's start here. Because I believe this is the main point. This is one of the main reasons why they took these 3 chapters out of the Green Book, so that you and I wouldn't have a chance to read this up front before making a decision to join this church and pay our tithes and offering and do volunteer work and lose sleep and etc., right? Since the Israeli nation came to independence in 1948, it makes it 1988, 40 years after. So he's telling you that 40 years after 1948 will be 1988. Okay, so that's simple math. But then it says, will the world really come to an end at that time? Or will there only be a minor change in the Israeli nation like what happened in the past? Now, for the Israeli nation, I wouldn't call that minor, but he's talking about on the scope of the whole world, the whole earth. Israel was destroyed. So it was major what happened to them. But in comparison to the rest of the world, it's just one nation falling while the rest of the nations are still intact. So that's what he's saying here with the minor change. Will the world really come to an end at that time, meaning in 1988? Or will there only be a minor change in the Israeli nation like what happened in the past? So is he saying, is 1988 going to really be the end of the world? Or is it just going to be the end of the Israeli nation again, like what happened in AD 70? Now here's this quote. As Jesus said, as soon as its twigs get tender and its leaves come out, you know that summer is near. Even so, when you see all these things, you know that it is near, right at the door. So he quoted Jesus Christ from the Bible. And now this is his words, because it's not quotation marks around it. It will surely come to an end at that time. So he's telling you that the world will surely come to an end in 1988. But as the date of recording of this video I'm making, it's October 29th, 2020. All right? Today is Thursday, October 29th, 2020. So we're 32 years in the future beyond 1988. Now, why am I bringing that out? Because there's reason to believe that WMSCOG predicted the end of the world in 1999 or the year 2000, that Y2K thing. And as we also know, they did predict the end of the world in 2012, which they pretend they did not, because they told me the world could not go past 2012. I heard it from the missionary. I heard it from the deacon. I heard it from another brother who later became a deacon. And we were discussing it in the sanctuary at the very beginning of 2013, wondering whether the Father, quote unquote, or unsung home was going to come according to the sacred calendar, meaning after Passover, then the biblical calendar's 2012 will be over, because we had to find some excuse why it did not end. Why were we still in the sanctuary in January 2013? So I know you taught it in 2012, and I'm looking at proof here that you took the failed prophecy of 1988 out of the books that you sold me. So with that being said, this is a lie, and this is the proof. So now we're going to see what the Bible says about such activity. Okay, so now we're going to read Deuteronomy chapter 18. We're in the King James Version. Let's go down to verse 20. But the prophet which shall presume to speak a word in my name, which I have not commanded him to speak, or that shall speak in the name of other gods, even that prophet shall die. Excuse me. And if thou say in thine heart, how shall we know the word which the Lord hath not spoken? In other words, how will you know whether a prophet has said something that God himself did not say or did not speak? Verse 22. When a prophet speaketh in the name of the Lord, right? If the thing follow not, nor come to pass, that is the thing which the Lord hath not spoken. But the prophet hath spoken it presumptuously. Thou shalt not be afraid of him. And for those of you who are familiar with the New International Version, I'm going to read it there for you as well. Still in Deuteronomy chapter 18, now I'm coming from the NIV, a New International Version. Verse 20. But a prophet who presumes to speak in my name anything I have not commanded, or a prophet who speaks in the name of other gods, is to be put to death. You may say to yourselves, how can we know when a message has not been spoken by the Lord? If what a prophet proclaims in the name of the Lord does not take place or come true, that is a message the Lord has not spoken. That prophet has spoken presumptuously, so do not be alarmed. So, Unsung Hong prophesied that the world would surely come to an end in 1988. So my question to you is this: should you be alarmed? Or as the King James Version says, should you be afraid of him? Was that the word of the Lord, that the world would end in 1988? Or did that prophet speak presumptuously? Or let's put it this way: the words in those missing 3 chapters of the Green Book, who wrote those words? Right? Because in 1980, some of you were not even born. And if you were, you were children. Who wrote those words in that book that was in those 3 chapters of the Mystery of God book that they took out and did not allow you to see it? Who wrote those words? And with that, I'm going to say, have a good day.